Hi, I am Lorna
Oh,
Cook and I am joined by Clare Marchant and Adrienne Chinn. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
oh.
So I thought we would do a very easy introduction, but it's also that bit that everybody dreads when we go around the room and talk about ourselves a bit. But it's an easy thing to do because it's better that you introduce yourselves rather than me, because you know you and your books best. So, so how about Clare? Should I throw you in at the deep end?
Oh, thank you.
Do you want to tell us about you quickly and your book? Because you're a debut author, so this is very, very exciting.
It is all exciting. So, yeah, my name's Clare Marchant. I live in Norfolk. My debut novel is Secrets of Saffron Hall, lovely cover, and it is published next Thursday, which is the 6th of August. It's a dual timeline, Tudor and present day historical novel. I'm very excited.
It's very exciting, very exciting. And Adrienne, what about you?
Well, I'm a novelist. I've just had my second book come out at the end of June, The English Wife. I'll hold that one up. Here we go. See there?
Beautiful.
Yeah. And yes, my first book was The Lost Letter from Morocco. That came out last year. This one's just come out. It's already bestseller in Canada, which hit the Globe and Mail bestseller lists a week ago. So I'm absolutely thrilled about that.
Wow.
And
congratulations.
Yeah, no, that was really thrilling. So thank you, Canadians. Oh, it's fantastic. And it's The English Wife is a time slip book. It's part of it set in World War II Britain, mostly in Norwich. And there was with more contemporary story set in contemporary Newfoundland in 2001, when 38 international flights were diverted to a small airport in the middle of Newfoundland when 9/11 occurred, and then 10 years later in 2011. So that's what it is.
Fantastic, fantastic. So for yours then, Adrienne, you have obviously some real life history involved in yours, because yes. I'm sure I read in your author note, it's a bit of family history,
yeah,
and obviously 9/11 as well, which when I saw it, I thought, oh, well, I wonder what's going to happen here. This is quite a tricksy subject to handle, but you handled it so well. And I did remember reading on the news about the flights that were all diverted. And so how much of that is kind of real from what you know of the history, like how it was treated by the community and things like that?
Yeah, well, I had an uncle who was a Newfoundland soldier during World War II. And at that time, Newfoundland wasn't part of Canada. It was part of a dominion of the United Kingdom, just like South Africa or Australia. Newfoundland was a dominion of the United Kingdom. So it had its own army, it had its own stamps, it had its own money, it was not part of Canada at all. So when Britain entered the war, Newfoundland entered right away with it, and sent over 100,000 soldiers from an island that only had a population of 250,000 people to World War II, to Britain. And one of my uncles was one of these soldiers. And his unit was stationed just outside of Norwich in near a place called Philby. And during their training, they were a heavy artillery unit. And during their training, they were actually set the task to help build all the fortifications along the East Anglian coast, because they were expecting a big invasion from Germany along that coast, because it's such a flat area. So all the pillboxes and things like that, a lot of them were built by these Newfoundlanders. Later on, they were sent over to Italy and went down there. But what happened is my aunt, Stephanie, was British. She was an English woman. She was young. She was 17, and she was the granddaughter of the local vicar of Philby. And she was staying up with her grandparents for a while. And the vicar, being very generous-hearted, he thought it was his duty to invite one of these poor Newfoundland fellas so far away from home to come for Sunday lunch. So one Sunday lunch, my Uncle Gus Edwards rocked up. He was a sergeant major, and it was love at first sight. And they got married a year later. This was 1940. And she was only 8. She was 17 when she met him. She was 18 when they married. He was in his mid-20s. Yeah, so she became a war bride, and I thought the whole story about war brides is interesting because so many British women went over to Canada, Newfoundland, the United States as war brides after the war. And it was tough. You know, many of them never saw their families back in the UK ever again. And a lot of them found it quite tough. So I thought that was an interesting story to look at, and was inspired by my aunt and my uncle. And then the 9/11 story, I'm originally from Grand Falls, Newfoundland, which is only, it's not that far away from Gander in the center of the island. And so I heard about all of the 9/11 planes coming in. They'd all been diverted from landing in the United States. So a lot of them were landed at these small airports all around Canada. And so 38 international flights landed at this small airport in the middle of Newfoundland. And the Newfoundlanders are very hospitable people, and they took them into their homes, and they, you know, a lot of lifelong friendships were developed. And there were people from all over the world, and they were there for, you know, 4, 5, 6 days, some of them, they couldn't access their suitcases, they, you know, couldn't get their medicines, there were pets in the planes that the local SPCA people would go and feed, you know, so it was really quite something. So yeah, so I was always very inspired by that story, and I wanted to bring that in as the contemporary. One of my characters is in one of those planes, lands in Newfoundland, and then decides to look up her estranged aunt, and there we go. That's the inciting incident.
Brilliant. I loved it. I loved every second of it.
Oh, good,
it was a great
good.
book. And likewise with you as well, Claire. Yours was so evocative of the time and the place, and I felt like I learned so much from yours as well. I did not know saffron came from crocus flowers, so there we go.
Oh, well, yes. Yeah. And they still grow it now on the Norfolk coast.
Oh, really?
That was sort of one of the things, yeah, that made me want to include it. I mean, everyone knows about Saffron Walden, but yeah, they used to grow it at Walsingham Abbey, but they did grow all over East Anglia, and yeah, they do still grow it up there. So yeah.
And so what kind of, I mean, obviously yours is very beautifully Tudor historical, and it was such a lovely sort of a refreshing change to read a Tudor time slip novel, because there's not too many.
There aren't, no.
Which is quite lovely to see that kind of out and about. What about your sort of historical background to that? Was it based on a particular woman, or did you have a particular house in mind when you wrote it?
All sorts of sort of bits around Norfolk. I mean, I love going out to there's lots of sort of monastic ruins. And I was at a big sort of monastic ruin in a place called Binham, and they still use the nave for their parish church. Sort of gave me the idea of sort of using that. But yeah, they are sort of all over the place, and I just find them so sort of evocative when you're there. I often sort of like to walk around with my eyes closed, and you can sort of just almost imagine that there are ghosts just moving past you.
Wow.
So yeah, so I mean, I love the Tudor era, so it was fairly sort of easy for me, Dissolution of the Monasteries, to sort of start wrapping that all up in the story.
Yeah, definitely. So no one particular woman or inciting incident you read about that sort of triggered it more than any
No, not. I mean, all the historical bits in my books, I like, you know, they have to be correct. So whenever I've mentioned anybody who was really there, all their stories are always correct, and then I just sort of wind in sort of my characters to sort of fit in with the story. I don't like to mess around with history. I think if it happens, then that's how I'll relay it. But once you get minor characters that nobody knows about, it's quite easy to be able to sort of slot them in.
To make them do anything.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So 2 timelines for you, Claire, which is where I am as well. I feel in very safe waters with 2 timelines. But
I know. Three. I couldn't do that.
No, I know. I took my house off you.
I know. 3 was challenging, I have to say. I don't know. I kind of, if I can visualize it like I'm knitting. I don't knit, but I can imagine it's like one of the stories is one color wool, and another story is another, and it's like just knitting the stories together. The way I wrote this one was I wrote all of the World War II story first. I wrote all of that first, And I wrote that in Britain, and I went up to Norwich and researched there and all of that. And then I took 6 weeks and I went over to Newfoundland for a month, and stayed with relatives across Newfoundland, and rented a car and visited all sorts of beautiful outport villages, and just really, I mean, the way people speak there is very unique, and just getting back the way that people were speaking and the humor. It's just a really lovely humor that Newfoundlanders have. And I have 9 Newfoundland uncles, so it was nice to slot back into being a Newfoundlander again. So I did that, and I started writing the Newfoundland story there. And then I went to a week in Ontario, a week in Quebec, visiting friends and relatives, kept writing. And I got back at the end of June, and I had to have the first draft in at my editors by the middle of July. So I just slammed the last 2 weeks and just typed a lot. And I managed it. But it was, the first book I wrote took me, 7 years, and this one took me 7 months, and it's nothing like a deadline. Nothing like a deadline. Yeah.
It is so different with the second book.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where I am now. It is,
Are you?
Very different, yeah.
How long did it take you to write The Secrets of Saffron Hall?
Well, that was probably about 2 years. So yeah, I went into the RNA New Writer Scheme as a partial, and then the second year sort of as the whole thing. But yes, I didn't have any deadlines. I could just play around with it and just go over it, and then it's a bit different now. That was the real world.
Oh, fantastic. And so for Clare, this is, I mean, we've touched on this a little bit before about Tudor time slip. Is this would you say this is your favourite era, the Tudor era?
I think it is. There are eras that I like, but I do love the Tudor era. It's just so volatile. I love the fact that you can wake up in the morning with a sniffle and be dead by lunchtime. You know, you can be at court and you've only got to say something quite innocently wrong and your head's off. You know, I love all that. I love the opulence of the court compared to how the poor people were living. As sort of Eleanor experienced in Secret of Saffron Hall, you could be married off to somebody and just end up, you know, living somewhere completely different. You don't know anybody. Yeah, it's just all so different. And sort of the Renaissance, there's so many inventions then, printing and things like that. Yeah, just an amazing time. I don't think I'd have liked to have been alive then, or my head probably wouldn't be on my shoulders because I quite often blurt things out. But but I do love it. I love the Tudor era.
There are some instances in history where I think I would love to have lived then, but I would have liked to have been a rich person.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, if I was going to live then.
Yeah, but I think even with, like, you're right, even with the Tudor era, I think being a rich person was dangerous, because if you were, the higher up you were, the more, you know, the more you were likely to lose your head rather than die from the sniffles. So
I mean, wherever you were, it was, and yet they still had the same emotions, I think, and experience the same sort of things as we do today, as characters, as people. That was no different then, as emotionally, but very different day to day. Like you say, I'd rather have been a rich person.
I know. I was thinking things like Regency England. I mean, when you watch things like Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, and you read them and you think, oh, what a lovely life. And then, of course, you read about how the other half lived.
That's right. Very different. Yeah.
What a good time to be alive. But, you know, Tudor period of, maybe I'd like to have been a rich person. But actually, no, I don't think I'd like to have lived.
Either way, it was. And even just sort of the religion. I mean, one morning you wake up and you're told you've got to be Catholic. And then a couple of years later, it's, oh, no, you're not. And you've just got to swing with it, or you weren't going to be around. So
and this is the issue I think I find with World War II, because Adrienne, you're obviously a World War II writer for this book, and I've kind of been doing it for 2 or 3 books now, and I think the way women on the home front is portrayed, yes, it was hard, really, really awfully hard, harrowing, bombs dropping, but they just managed to make it look quite glamorous, and so you have to kind of pair that off and say, well, actually, you know, it's a lovely time to have been alive. They lived really fast, but you know, likewise died fast as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
Never a good time.
And they didn't know. The thing people forget, they didn't know how it was going to end. We all know,
yes.
readers, we know how it all ended. But my dad was in the RCAF during the war, and he was 19 in 1939. So, and he was living in Canada, so he signed up, and so he was over in Britain in the RCAF with the RAF during the war, and he would often say to us when I was growing up, you know, we just didn't know from day to day what was going to happen. It's a very different thing to understand when you're living through things at the time than when you're looking back at it.
Yeah.
You know, so he said it was frightening. You know, it was frightening. Yeah.
Definitely. And then towards the end, you know, the V1 rockets and all that sort of thing arrived.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Roll on 2020. I'm happy. Well, maybe not. 2021.
Let's just say 2021.
Yes.
Control Alt Delete 2020. Yes.
Which brings us neatly on in a mad segue towards having a book come out in a sort of strange lockdown, not lockdown. So Adrienne, you were a month ago. The English Wife was a month ago. Well, I can't even remember. It's been like, are we on week 27,000 now?
I know, exactly.
Where were we a month ago? Were we sort of half out, half in? I can't.
We were out, just out by a few weeks. I think we just started doing Bubble Sunday or Bubbles once a week or something like that. It was something like that.
It's all a distant.
Who knows? It all blurs together.
Who knows?
How was it launching a book?
It was all right, actually, because, you know, a lot of people are reading an awful lot right now, especially Kindles, to be honest. And the book is done really well on Amazon here and Canada and .com right from the get-go, because everybody's just looking for something new to read, you know. And I think also historical fiction is very popular, and historical romance is very popular. So those genres seem to be doing particularly well. I think people want a little bit of a feel-good thing right now because life is a bit crazy, you know.
It's true. I've been having some very lovely messages from some readers who say, I only ever normally read psychological thrillers, but I was like, yes, we've converted a few of them.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I'm getting a lot of men reading my books too, which is really interesting because, and it's something I think people need to take on board with these books, that you're not necessarily just writing for a female audience. And I've had a lot of really good feedback from men leaving reviews on Amazon and Goodreads saying, love this book, it's fantastic, you know. So I think we need, as writers, need to remember we're potentially writing for men and women, you know.
Easy to forget, I think. Easy to forget. So Claire, you are lucky. You are launching a book in August the 6th, so not long.
That's right. No, that's right. Next week.
Out of lockdown, so it's a better time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's still a bit affected. I can't do sort of signings in a local bookshop because it's small and they can't fit the people in, and sort of no launch party, which I might have done as it's my debut. But definitely, yeah, people are able to get into bookshops now, so I think that does make a difference. Fingers crossed that, yeah.
That's lovely. Have you got lots of lovely support from your local bookshop, stocking some paperbacks?
Yes, yeah, been sort of organising that. Like I said, I can't do the signing that I would have wanted to do, but I'm definitely in touch with all the local bookshops.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, you'll have to go hard at it on book 2 and do a double whammy of a launch for that then, I guess.
Oh, I think I will, yes.
Yeah. Did you do book launches, Adrienne, when you did
I did one, not for this one, but for the first book I did. And that was fun, you know, and I had a big party and had, I don't know, about 60 people come, and it was good fun. You know, it was so long coming. There was so much work and so many years that I just thought, you know what, I'm going to have a party, you know, and I'm glad I did, because it was a really fun event and it was nice to share the experience with all these friends and people that, you know, I'm close with. So yeah, it was well worth doing.
Perfect. Book 2 for you, Claire. Hang on in there. Book
Yeah,
2.
I think so. I definitely feel like I've missed out. And so you get so much support from your family and friends and other authors as you're sort of going along the journey. So yeah, I want to be able to celebrate with them and not at sort of 2 meters away.
Yeah, exactly. How long has your journey been? Is this your first book, The Secrets of Saffron? Is it your first book that you've written, completed, subbed, and you struck lucky, or have you been going at it for
And I have been going at it sort of for quite a while. Well, I've sort of written, yes, since what feels like forever, and sort of in my spare time. And then when I joined the RNA 2016, then I stopped working to concentrate on the writing. And even so, I've sort of written 3 books before I wrote Secrets of Saffron Hall. But each time I sort of get in and think, this isn't good enough, this isn't good enough. So really it was only when I got to that point that I thought, this I think has got legs. This I want to, start subbing and whatever. So it takes a while to sort of, learn everything, doesn't it? You sort of go into it thinking, oh, if I sit down and I start here and I finish here and I've written a book, and as you guys know, it's not like that at all. So so it's taken me about 3-4 years to really learn the craft.
And have all the other books you've written been Tudor?
No,
have they been time slip?
No, the first one was, in fact, all 3 of them were just contemporary romance. And really, when I sat down and thought about it, I thought, well, I read historical. My background's in history, like my degree and my MA, and I trained as a history teacher. So and I thought, well, why aren't you just writing historical? Because that's what I really like. And then I sort of had all these little ideas for this book, and almost like threads. And then as I started to weave them all together, then I realized that that's sort of really where my heart lies, and I should just be embracing what I like instead of just kind of drifting around writing things and not really knowing what I wanted to write.
Yeah. What about you? Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say it's a bit of a revelation when I realized where I wanted to.
Your true calling.
Right.
What about you, Adrienne? So you said about 7 years to write the Morocco. Remind me of the Morocco title.
It's the last letter from Morocco. There we go.
So 7 years in the making. And what about after that?
Well, I'd always wanted to be a novelist ever since I was a kid. Just always wanted to. That's what I wanted to do. And I did a master's degree in English literature in Canada, and I was a journalist there for a while before I moved to Britain. Moved to Britain 30 years ago, so I've been here a long time. And then when I came over, I fell into doing some freelance work in film and television here, and did that for 5 years, and that was lots of fun. And then I retrained as an interior designer, so I've been doing that for 20 years for myself. So I was doing things and I wasn't writing anymore. I was reading a lot, but I just wasn't writing. And about in 2010, I had a significant birthday. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to take the writing seriously. It's time to do that. So I got onto the Faber Academy Writing a Novel course, which is a really good course, 6-month course, 1 night a week and Saturday, 1 night a week and 2 Saturdays a month. And I have been traveling to Morocco for, 14, 15 years. I just really love it. I know a lot of people there. I've had a lot of interesting experiences there. And I was really inspired to write about Morocco. So I started writing that book on that course, and that was in 2011. And then I was still working full time and all the rest. So over the ensuing years, I was just writing on weekends, and can't write at night, but weekends and holidays and Christmas Day. And I was writing all the time, and rewrote it many, many times, sent it out to agents every few years, and here, Canada, United States, Australia, anywhere. Got rejected about 300 times, and I'm not exaggerating. And but I'd go back and I would rewrite, and then I had writing mentor help me for a year, and that really helped. I rewrote the whole book. Put it aside for a year when I got exasperated and didn't know what else to do with it. And but finally, it came good. So you just have to believe in yourself and keep, as you were saying, Claire, you just have to keep honing your craft. You just have to keep working at it. And that's, I was just stubborn. I was just saying, no, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. I wouldn't take no for an answer. And it took a long time, but I got there in the end. So I'm really pleased. Yeah.
Did you get your agent first or your publishing deal?
I did not. No. What happened is I met up for some wine with a couple of the women I'd met on the Faber Academy course. And this is like 6 years down the line or something. And one of them had got a 2-book deal at Avon doing psychological crime thrillers. And she'd had her book come out the previous, 6 months previously and all of that. And the rest of us were kind of having a moan about not being, getting all these rejections and all the rest. And she said to me, she took me aside and she said, she always liked my writing, and she'd always take me aside in the course, say, I really like your writing, which was nice. And she said, look, send your book to my editor at Avon. Just send it, and I'll tell her it's going to come, and you just tell her in the letter that I told her that she has to read it. Okay. So I did. That's what I did. And that was in February 2018. Didn't hear anything. And then it was May, it was a Friday afternoon, just before one of the bank holiday weekends. And I was on Clapham Junction Station. And I'd been teaching interior design that day in town. And I was waiting for the train. I live down in Sussex. And I was waiting for the train, and my phone pings, yeah? And an email had come in from Avon Books. And I'm going like, okay, right. And I'd had so many rejection emails over the years, you know how they start. Dear Adrienne, thank you for submitting the book. You do understand that it does take some time to get to all read this and that. And you kind of scrolling through your phone and kind of like, okay, here we go, another rejection. And I was reading, and apologize for taking so long to get back to you. We've all read it in the office here, and we all love it, and we'd like to offer you a 2-book deal. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I just couldn't believe it. It was a pinch me moment. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that's what happened. Yeah. That's what
I love that you remember you were on Clapham Junction Station. Everyone remembers where they were when they get their
Yeah, I definitely remember. And I was on my own, and there was nobody, and it was a holiday, holiday, and nobody was at work, and nobody was at home, and there was nobody I could call. And it was just like, I was just bursting to tell somebody. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that was great. And I got my agent after that. After that. Yeah.
Perfect. And what about you, Claire? How did your sort of path really to getting with Avon?
So I met with my agent Ella Khan at the RNA conference. I'd had a one-to-one with her, and she was very interested. And I said, well, I'm still editing it. She said, that's fine, just send it when you're done. So I submitted to her in the October, and as everybody tells you to, I submitted to various other agents, and I'd had sort of another 4 requests for the full. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then one Tuesday that I now refer to as Black Tuesday in November, I had 3 rejections in about the space of an hour. Somebody who'd had the full and 2 others. And I'm not the sort of person who can just get, well, I mean, I was obviously very disappointed, but I have to be proactive. I don't just sort of sit around and thought, oh, what am I going to do now? I know. I'll see which publishers, while I was still waiting for this sort of other agents who got the full, so I'll see which publishers will take sort of submittable novels. Sent it off to Avon, sort of mid-November, and I had an email from Bethany, my editor, a couple of weeks later saying, oh, I'm really enjoying this. And then a bit like you, Adrienne, this email arrived. It was the 18th of December, and I can remember because it was the kids broke up from school, and I've got sort of school-aged lad, and I've also got an older daughter who lives in the village, and she's got small children. And I said, oh, bring all the kids round. The last day of term, I'll do a Christmas-themed tea for them, you see. I'm a lovely grandma. So they were all in the kitchen, and I just thought, oh, there's an email from Avon. And a bit like you, I was, and we'd like to offer you a contract. And I was like, oh my God.
Exactly, it's that, isn't it? It really is that. It really is that.
Absolutely was. It was the most brilliant moment. So then I emailed Ella and I said, well, this has happened. And of course, everybody was stopping for Christmas, literally, sort of that day. So she said, well, it's brilliant. We'll have a chat in the new year. So it all sort of ended up dovetailing that we had a chat in the new year, and then she sort of got on board sorting out the contract and whatever. So yeah, almost ended up happening at the same time. But it was the most exciting day of my life.
Oh, yeah,
Happy Christmas.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Yeah, I kept saying to my husband, did you know I've got a book contract? Literally weeks afterwards, I'd say to him almost every day, I'd be like, not again. I could hardly believe it had happened.
It is a magic time when that happens.
It is thrilling, yeah.
Definitely. Oh.
So where were you, Lorna? Where were you when you found
Yes, I was going to ask that. Where did you
I
hear yours?
I was in a hotel. I was in a hotel in Suffolk. It's not a million miles away from you, Claire, up in Avon. I think it was like a May bank holiday weekend almost to be, I think. And yeah, I was there, but I already had my agent. So it was a case of her going out on submission. And it's when you get your agent first, well, I don't know. I hear this from a lot of other authors as well. But for me, when I got my agent first, it was like, yes, I've made it. Done. Do not have to worry ever again. And then, of course, you just, you know, if you've come at it a different way, you've got your publishers first. I mean, that's it. You've kind of made it then, definitely, haven't you? But I was the other way around. I was what I suppose I would always have thought of the more normal way, where you get your agent first, then you get your publisher. So I love that you two have kind of bucked that trend a little bit. But then, yes, we went out on submission, and then that's when you're like, you have no control over that part, and you're in the hands of the gods, and you have to wait for
refreshing your email every 10 minutes.
Every 10 minutes. Yes, it's a very tragic set of affairs, isn't it, really? So I was in a hotel, and I was with my husband, and we were supposed to be having a sort of anniversary weekend away, and I kept refreshing, you know, I might get a publishing deal. I was like, I'll never get a publishing deal this weekend, and then I did. I was like, oh, and my agent was like, can I ring you? And I was like, yes. So, you know, in the middle of a romantic lunch, I was like, I'll be right back, and running away.
Oh wow.
It was perfect, really. But yeah, a good time. So Adrienne was talking about being on the Faber course. I'm going to whiz back to that. And Claire, what about you? Have you done any courses, or are you kind of self-taught? I'm a bit self-taught, if I'm honest.
Well, yeah, I am, I suppose, a bit self-taught. I've been to all the RNA conferences for the past 4 years and sort of lapped up all of those workshops and seminars and everything that everybody says. Yeah, lots of books. But yeah, some of it is sort of self-taught, really, and just making mistakes and realising where you're going wrong and what you need to do. You know, the whole structure of a novel, I suppose, is what I've needed to learn. I can produce the words, but yeah, it's got to have a proper character arc and things like that, which yeah, I've had to learn about. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. Adrienne, are you in the RNA? The romantic
I am, yes. Yes, I joined about a year ago. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Is that, so I was going to go to the first event this July, but of course it got cancelled. But I'll go to the next one.
Everything's virtual now.
Yeah.
For the time being, anyway. But I'm very similar to Claire in that I was on the New Writers Scheme, and you're a New Writers Scheme graduate as well. So are you up for the Joan Hussain Award this year, Claire?
I'm not, only because when the book's published, I was told I could choose whether to go this year or next year, and I decided I wanted to go next year in the hope that we'll actually all be up at York, because I was there when you won it, Lorna, last year, and I thought, I want a part of that. I want my photograph taken outside, holding my book, and just the whole afternoon tea and the whole fun of it. So yeah, so a bit naughty of me really, but I didn't want the virtual one. I wanted to go. So I've decided I'll go in it next year. Yeah.
So the Joan Hussain Award is for viewers who don't know. It's part of the Romantic Novelists Association. They hold an award ceremony every year, and if you are on the New Writers Scheme, you get put onto, and you get a book published. I think it's just traditionally, I'm not really sure, but then you get to be part of the award, you get to be a nominee, and as Claire says, you get to go up to York to the lovely York tea, and not this year, but next year, and then have your photo taken if you win, and even if you don't, and you stand there, and it's just a lovely, lovely convivial atmosphere, and there's tea and cake and Prosecco, and you know, what more could you want?
More could you want, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
I'm sold.
Okay. So let's talk about researching. I mean, this is something I often do in a big blitz. I'll read all the books I can get my hands on, and then I will probably promptly forget most of it. And then I will start writing, and then I will put big crosses where I need to put actual specific detail. And then I will kind of come back, and then I will just do as many museums as I can. Obviously not this year, but next year. But what about you guys? Do you have any method, or is it a mad method? What do you guys do? Adrienne, should we start with you?
Sure. Well, like Claire, I'm a history buff. My undergraduate degree was English and history, so I like history. So it feels like a natural thing to write some historical work. I research right the way through. So I start, yes, right. I mean, the book I'm writing now is taking a lot of research. It takes place in World War I, so there's a lot to know about. Yeah. And it takes place in 4 different countries, so there's a lot.
Wow.
So there's a lot to read about. It would be too much to try to do it all at the beginning and then try to write, because I'm like you, Claire. I want to make sure all the details are correct, and that anything I put in the book that's historical is correct. So as far as the research goes, I do it as I go along for each chapter. So I know I will have worked out a chapter structure, and then I'll know, well, this chapter today is going to be, like when I was writing The English Wife, and I would have chapters in Norwich where there was a bombing or something. And I would make sure that I'd researched when there were bombings and where the flight path was and where the damage was and what buildings were damaged, and I would make sure that dovetailed with the dates in the book and what the weather was like that day, and all of those kind of things. So I'll do an intensive bit of research per chapter, so it's all there and fresh while I'm writing, and I can refer to it. Yeah, so it's a lot to do in a day, but I don't have to hold all of that information in my head for a long period of time. I can kind of go at it really strongly and then put it aside and get to the next chapter with whatever I need to research for that. So, and I do the museums, and I like going to places because I really get a feeling for places a lot. So yeah.
I'm very visual as well. I love the reading. I love watching documentaries, but nothing quite it works very well if you're writing about something on home turf, and then the museums are very accessible, but there's a lot of online sort of national archives and things like that, which are always good if you can't get somewhere. But what about you, Claire? What do you do?
Well, I'm a bit like you. I read loads and loads and loads, and I disappear down rabbit holes, and because I'm always sort of looking for people who, that I can sort of just like tie into my story. So people have always got to be in the right place at the wrong time, so that I can tie them in, as it were. So I read loads and loads and loads and make tons of notes because I love doing that. And I could like happily spend my whole life just researching because I really enjoy doing that. And I do still have like little X's as I'm going along. There's always little bits that I can't remember, herbal remedies, things like that. I'll just sort of put a little X and then go and look it up afterwards. But yeah, most of my research, and I do really disappear down rabbit holes where I'll sort of be following one person and then I'll see their wife who was related to somebody else who's interesting, and I'm like, oh, I wonder where so I can sort of spend half a day and realise that I've actually researched nothing I was supposed to be. But I know lots more about some of your family. Yeah, I just love it. I just love the research so much.
So do you do it as you go along as well?
No, I do most of it at the beginning. So because I'm a planner, so I've got to have quite a detailed plan before I even start writing. So I mean, my book that I'm writing now, which is the Tudor part, is set at the Elizabethan court with Walsingham and all his spies. So I've been sort of researching all those plots and spies and the ciphers and who was where. So so I got quite sort of carried away with all that. I do like to know, so that as I'm writing it, I know that I'm putting my protagonists in a place where they really will be.
Fantastic. We'll come on to what you're writing next in a bit. I'm going to do a big chunk on that. So you're a planner. That's really interesting. And
Yes.
Are you a real planner, or are you a sort of we'll go here, and we get to the end, or do you chapter by chapter? What's your method?
I am a real planner. I was a project planner, project manager when I was sort of working in my IT days. So I would never just jump in and start. I have everything planned out. I know what's going to happen to each person, where they need to be. yeah, all the historical details that I need to be correct. And then I sort of sit down the night before and I write out a great long piece just to myself of the next chapter and exactly what's going to happen, so that when I sit down, I'm not thinking, oh, I'll give myself a cup of tea because I'm not sure what I want to do. I just sit down and I've made myself enough notes that I can just like get on with it, chapter out. So yeah.
What about you, Adrienne?
I think I'm a hybrid. I
think I am too.
Yeah, I'm definitely a hybrid. The first book, I was totally a pantser for quite a bit of it, and I really needed to work on the structure. So that's what I needed to do. So this time, I did a lot of planning first, where I am very much influenced by location and characters. So I went up to Norwich and spent several days up there to get the feeling of the place. It's why I had to go to Newfoundland, to just remind myself of the feeling of the place. And then I do a big character document, and I drop in pictures of actors and actresses and whatever, so I can visualize that person as I write. And if the person, like Ellie, ages, I'll have a young actress for the young one and then an older actress for the older Ellie. It really helps visualize them. And I do paragraphs on every character, main and secondary characters, all about what their birth date is, where they're born, who their family members are, do they have pets, where they go to school, what subjects they like, do they play sports. I do that for everybody. So that takes a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they become really, really developed in my head. If they have any tics, any quirks, habits, things like that, I put all of that in. And then I will do a document where I'll go through the chapters. I tend to write fairly short chapters. And I work out about 3 or 4 sentences per chapter about who's in that chapter and what generally has to happen. I don't go into a lot of detail, but I kind of have a signpost of what needs to happen in that chapter. I also found this fantastic book. I just have to say what it is. It's called Take Off Your Pants. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's what I use. Yeah,
it's
that's
amazing.
My favorite.
It's got so many notes in it. And it's a really good book on structure. And I use it. I have all these notes and everything. I use it to work out my structure of the novel, and make sure I'm hitting the arcs and points I have to hit. And then I go at the novel, and then I go at it. And sometimes I'm adding some more chapters, and sometimes I'm tweaking things as I go. So I have a skeleton, but how I flesh it out might change as I go. So I'm a bit of a pantser writing, but I need that plotting structure in a way. Yeah, that's what I do.
I think I'm halfway between both of you. I'm kind of like a 1-page synopsis that I try and do, and basically it's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and how we get there is anyone's guess. So it's kind of plotting pantsing. It's a strange mix. Seems to work. I think. I hope. You mentioned something, and I was going to ask questions on this. So this is really interesting about who would you cast in your books? Were they a film? But you've already
cast them. I already cast people when I'm writing. Yeah.
Who have you? So for the English Wife, who have you cast?
Oh, I've cast Emily Blunt as Sophie, and Helen Mirren as Ellie, older Ellie.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So casting them, do you take their mannerisms from films, or do
no? I make them. I create people, but it just helps for me to carry their picture in my head, because then I can be really loyal to them when I'm describing them, because they're very clear in my head. Yeah.
Wow. So what about your heroes? Do you cast your heroes?
Oh yeah. But they're not necessarily famous people, they all tend to be performers, but like I found a fantastic Newfoundland actor who I thought would be great as Thomas, and I had I can't remember his name now. I had somebody for Ellie's father, and everybody. I work it all out. Yeah.
What about you, Claire?
So if and when they become movies, I've already got the cast list.
Brilliant.
You're ready. You've
Very good.
used the role. You can put your foot down and say,
Yeah.
I would basically just cast Adrienne Turner in everything. So if my books ever get made,
Oh yeah,
a lot of work done.
Yes.
What about you, Claire? Who do you cast, or do you not?
I don't really. No, I mean I know what they look like in my head, but I don't really sort of. The only person I would say is Greville would be Matthew Good. If you know
I love Matthew Good. He's so good.
So he's in my head. He's always been Greville, but the others no are not. I knew exactly what Tom, the little deaf boy, looks like, but no, Eleanor and Amber and Jonathan. I didn't. I mean, yes, I know what they look like, but I've never sort of cast them. So anybody can have the job. I don't mind.
So which bits did you find the easiest to write, considering we all write various times in our books? Contemporary, you're a dab hand at contemporary already, Claire, having cut your teeth practicing with contemporary.
That's true.
Did you find the historical bits easier than the contemporary to write for this book, for Secrets of Saffron Hall?
I didn't find it easier, but I think because they still had the same emotions. Eleanor is still going through the same emotions as she would be today. So I did sort of go through a spell of making sure that I wasn't making them talk in a pseudo-Tudor way, and I kept walking around home saying "forsooth," "hey nonny nonny" and things just to wind people up. But yeah, I was sort of careful to try and get their voice right, as it were. So I didn't find it, but I had to put my head sort of into that era to be able to write those bits. Yeah, so contemporary from that point of view is easier for me. But I think I enjoy writing the historical more. So yeah, but I did have to sort of put myself in that era and think how Eleanor would have been thinking. Yeah.
What about you, Adrienne?
I really like the mix. I mean, I love writing contemporary stuff. I love getting into the head of contemporary people, contemporary women. So the Newfoundland stuff was great fun to write. You can be a bit more irreverent with the contemporary stuff because we all are. Yeah. But I do like history, and I really like writing in a past era in a way that brings it alive to a reader, so they don't feel that it's dusty and musty, like reading your both of you reading your books. It doesn't feel dusty and musty. How you write the past does make it feel like it's real, and that's really important to me. That's really
accessible
important.
History.
Accessible. That's right. So I do like doing that, but I do like throwing in the contemporary because it just adds a different energy to the book as well. So I like mixing the two.
That's interesting you say a different energy. When I started writing The Forgotten Village, it was just natural that I went from past to present and back and forward, and I don't know, I didn't even think about it. It just felt natural. And I wasn't even tempted to just write a pure historical. I don't even know why. Some sort of back of the mind psychology just told me not to. But was it like that for you too? Did you sort of naturally say, this will be a dual timeline? What about you, Adrienne? Should we start with you?
Yeah, definitely for The English Wife. I knew it was going to be part of it in World War II and part of it in 2001 and 2011. I just knew that. Oddly enough, the book I'm reading now is a time slip, but it's a time slip World War I and then going back to 1892. So it's a double historical time slip. So that's interesting. That's an interesting thing to do. Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Claire, what about you? Were you naturally going to be a time slip writer?
Yeah, I love reading time slip, and as you say, yeah, I'd never considered that it would be one thing or the other. I always wanted to wind their stories in and just to have those connections, experiencing the same things in different eras. So yeah, I can't imagine not writing time slips.
So Adrienne, you're doing World War I next.
Yes, I am. Three sisters.
With what, sorry?
Three sisters.
Three sisters. Is that set in, where, you said 4 countries. Where are you?
Yes, well, it's set, there are three British sisters. They're London sisters. from Hither Green, a middle class. Yeah, one becomes army nurse, which my great aunt did. She would, they were all English women, and one became a army nurse and went to Gallipoli in Egypt. So I thought, oh, that's a really interesting story. One ends up in Capri, and one will end up going to Canada. So, which my grandmother did. She ended up marrying her husband, and he'd had enough of the war when it was finished. He managed to survive the infantry from 1914 to 1919. So he said, I don't want anything more to do with Europe after that. There were veterans packages offered to Commonwealth countries. And so he put his name down for land in Australia, South Africa, and Canada. You're going to be given free land as long as you developed it as farmland. And the first country that came up was Canada in Alberta. So he hauled off his young wife and his 2 young children. My father was a year and a half old, and my aunt was 2.5. And they went off to Alberta and never came back to Britain. So I thought that's an interesting story. So yeah.
And an interesting time.
Yeah, very interesting time
as well.
And I liked it because so much changed for women at that time. It was a real pivotal point in history for women. And I don't think there could certainly be a lot more written about that. There's a lot of World War I about battles and all the rest, but I was interested in what was happening to the women. So that's what the story's about.
Fantastic. And Claire, you mentioned before you're staying with Tudor.
Yes, I am. A little bit further on. So the Tudor protagonist is Tom Lutton, who was the little deaf boy in Secrets of Saffron Hall. And he's returned to England from France as an adult, and ends up at the court of Queen Elizabeth and involved with Walsingham and all his spying and the plots that went on. And then, present day Norfolk again, and the protagonist, Mathilde, is a French immigrant haunted by her past, and it sort of follows the theme of us not being bogged down by our past and sort of being able to move on to the future. So, yeah.
Wow, exciting.
Yes.
Okay, we're almost coming up for time, so I'm going to select just 2 last questions. Who are your literary heroes? Who do you read for real pleasure that perhaps have influenced you along your way? Shall I go first while you think?
Yeah, you go first.
Mine is Kate Morton. I'm very much a Kate Morton fan. And I read The Forgotten Garden, I think it was. Oh no, it was The House at Riverton. It was The House at Riverton. That was my first of Kate Morton's that I read, and was just blown away by how magical it was. And so she's sort of my major hero, and she sort of, I suppose she sort of spurs the more modern day dual timelines, you know, in the way, I suppose Barbara Erskine was one of the first, wasn't she? I'm sort of more with Kate Morton, and Liz Fenwick as well. I adore Liz Fenwick, and Lucinda Riley. They're my big ones, the big 3. What about you? Have you thought who your real heroes are that kind of influence you?
I like, sorry, go.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay.
I still think.
I really like Rachel Hoare.
Oh yes, me too.
Love all her books. And also Kate Moss, the one set down in Carcassonne. I mean, completely different era, but just so exciting. Yeah. So yeah, both of those quite, different, very different, both of them, but love their books.
Great. What about you, Adrienne? You're drawing a blank.
No, I'm a really eclectic reader. And I'm just looking at my bookshelf here. I really like Stacey Hall's recent books. I've read The Familiars recently. Isabella Allende I read, Elif Shafak, Lawrence Osborne I'm a big fan of. Anya Seton, as far as Time Slip, I read a lot of her books when I was growing up. I read Ivanhoe. I read, I read what I read, a bit of this, bit of that. So just very eclectic with my reading. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I guess last question. what about advice? Do you have any advice for budding writers, or what advice were you given perhaps that you felt was very apt? Should we start with you, Claire?
I think my advice would be to try and write every day, even if it's only a small amount, because that's so important. And also just keep persevering. I mean, you know, I've already referred to Black Tuesday, and it can be very easy when you're getting rejections just to think, oh, I can't do this. You know, everybody gets rejections, and you have really got to just keep persevering and get there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Adrienne, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think it's useful to read the bad reviews that fantastic writers have received, and know that you're not the only one who gets them. That's good. Yeah. And what else? You know, you need to paint pictures in the reader's mind. So I'm a big movie buff. So watch a lot of good movies, because they have to tell a very good story in a short period of time. So they're very good with helping you with scene setting and concise scenes and moving the story forward and all of that. They're very helpful structurally. So I've taken a lot of screenwriting courses and things like that, and they've really helped my structure. And I would also say experiment with writing outside of your genre, and writing short stories and plays and poetry. And I write a lot of haiku. I just really like doing that. And I find that that's really helped me create good visuals in the novel in a concise way. So it's just like, it's all about honing the craft, isn't it? So yeah, and I've taken, like you, Claire, I've taken a lot of these weekend courses and gone to the York Writers Festival and all of those things. They all help, you know, they all help you hone your craft. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, ladies, it was so much fun. That hour whizzed by.
It did. It's been great.
Yes, it's great.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we'll let you all go. But now is a very good time to hold up your book. Let's be cheesy. So Adrienne Chinn's The English Wife, and this is me, which I'm not going to say out loud, and Clare Marchant's The Secret of Saffron Hall. They're absolutely fantastic. I've read them both and I adored them.
Thank you.
Claire's is out August 6th and Adrienne's is out now. Okay, great. Thanks so much, ladies. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Lorna. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.